Run.
Well, welcome everybody. And yes, the big day is here. Tonight is the night of the 2024 Power 50. And you'll see I'm appropriately dressed. But Ben, what are you wearing? Are you wearing that to the Power 50 tonight?
Look, I was thinking about it, Andrew, but I look, a little secret, of course. We're recording this a few days early. I am as as we speak. I am getting ready to travel to Manila, of course. But I thought I might just save the suit until the event itself.
Yes, it is a few days before, we have to admit. So I've thrown on the monkey suit just for the purposes of this video. But yeah, it's what we'll all be wearing tonight. So let's do a little bit of, well, this is officially on the run. So I should say where I am. I'm at Solaire, of course, Solaire Resort North, the venue host and sponsor of the entire event, including the after party. So we're very grateful to our friends at Solaire for the sponsorship, and we're very excited about having the Power 50 tonight at the at Solaire Resort North, and it'll be an opportunity for a lot of people to see the property and to enjoy the Sky Bar, where the after party is going to be. Nice venue. And what we thought we'd do this week is something a little bit different. Every single time we do the Power 50, we get asked over and over again, how do you do it? How do you work out who's number one, who's number two, who's number three, and so forth? And even though we've published this in IAG on numerous occasions, and in fact, we publish it every single year, and we've also explained it to people many times, we just get asked that question over and over again. At least I know I do. Do you get asked that, Ben?
Oh, absolutely. People are always asking. I mean, we'll go through a lot of the details of how we do it, but yeah, it's a very regular question. I think we asked ourselves that question in the early days too. How do we do it?
We certainly did. Solaire very kindly brought me a nice cup of coffee. Yeah, look, we did, and so let's take the opportunity to explain it, because a lot of people watching this video may well be at the event this evening, or if they're not, they may well be reading the list when we publish it late this evening. We'll publish it, as we always do every year, around about 10 p.m. Macau time, just mere minutes after the announcement's made live this year in Manila. The second time we've done it in the Philippines in 2022 due to the pandemic. We did it at COD Manila, and we're very grateful to Lawrence Ho and Jeff Andres and all the team over there at COD Manila, some of whom will be at the event tonight. And this year, 2024, we are, of course, at Solaire Resort North, and next year we'll be back to Macau. Anyway, on to the explanation. So, all right, well, perhaps, Ben, you could talk a little bit about when we inherited the Power 50 and we had to start to work out to do it ourselves, which was 2016. Was the first year that we did as the previous owners of IAG. A lot of people think that I founded IAG. I did not. I founded another magazine, and we joined IAG to it, and then we tended to focus on IAG as the years went by. But the first year we did it, you and I and the rest of the judging panel, was 2016. Before we go into the actual methodology we came up with, how did you feel about that task?
I remember you and I had discussed the importance of taking the task seriously. So not randomly choosing people and throwing them in based on, are they a client? Are they a friend? What's our real reasoning behind doing this? We wanted to have a genuine, practical, and I don't know if the word is mathematical. We wanted a real foundation behind where each person was on the list, and a real reason. So our first task, I recall, was just trying to figure out what was the best way to do that. And I remember we had lengthy discussions, and obviously we came up with a formula, which we have over the years slightly adjusted as we've probably become more knowledgeable of how it all works. But that was certainly the early impression, was let's get it right.
Yeah, I remember when we inherited it, we thought, oh, this is very dangerous. You're ranking people 1 to 50, and you're going to make one person happy and 49 people unhappy. It's like a poker tournament. There's only one person happy in a poker tournament, the guy who wins it, and everybody else is like, I could have done better. Everyone's looking at what's above them, not so much at what's below them. So I remember thinking, this is really dangerous. What are our choices here? Our choices are Well, to stop doing it, well, it had already been going for 10 years. So, or no, 8 years, sorry. It had already been going for 8 years. So it would have been sort of almost like admitting defeat to have stopped doing it. And I remember there were criticisms of it in the early years. There were criticisms that it was just a bit of a bit of a boys' club, you put your mates in there kind of thing. And there are a lot of media, gaming media companies around the world that use awards. Not that it's an awards. People often say awards. It's not an awards, it's a list. But using awards to reward advertisers and things like that. We really didn't want to do that. We wanted it to have strong credibility. So we thought the only way we can do this is just do it really objectively so that nobody could look at the list and go, oh, that doesn't make sense. They could look at the list and go, well, that's one argument. My argument's the other way, but I could see how they could make that argument. So, it was justifiable. I think we've been rewarded for that over the years. I mean, it's got more and more popular, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that also shows the value of the fact that we have a panel of very experienced judges that we talk to quite extensively during the process each year of making the 50, of putting the 50 together. So that's a whole lot of insights and experience that we get, which I think is very important, as you say, because different people have different viewpoints, and it's important to listen to those viewpoints.
Yep.
Sometimes people have a viewpoint you may not agree with, sometimes you do, but by putting all that information together, it really helps us with putting together what we think is a pretty accurate list these days.
Yeah, and it's difficult to compare people. I mean, some people are very apples and oranges, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I remember some of the discussions we had in the early days were how do you compare suppliers to operators? Are regulators involved? Well, no, we're not accounting regulators, but Pagcor is different because Pagcor has operations as well. So,
Right.
in the list over the years, we have included Pagcor's operations side only, but not its regulatory side. And then I guess the other aspect is many of the companies that we cover are international. A lot of companies based out of Las Vegas, for example. And so, what we were looking at is the Asian Gaming Power 50. So we try to focus on their operations in Asia, not necessarily globally, but taking into account at the same time the fact that some of these companies are very, very powerful and influential globally as well.
Right, right. Yeah, so there are a range of challenges. So anyway, let's get into it. So how do we do it? All right. Well, the first thing we do is we look at all of the companies rather than the people. We go and we look at all of the companies that are active in the Asia Pacific gaming industry. Our coverage area extends from the Middle East to the international date line. And of course, we've now announced that we're going to be merging with CDC from January the 1st. So their coverage goes from the international date line to the mid-Atlantic. So from January 1, our group will cover almost all the world. It'll include Canada, the United States, and Latin America as well. But anyway, for the Power 50, it's from the international date line to the Middle East. And we look at all of the countries in that zone, in that region that offer gaming. And we look at all of the major companies that are candidates that could possibly have an executive or an owner or somebody connected to that company on the Power 50. We think, well, there's a reasonable chance it could be. And we look at all those companies and we say, and our logic kind of went from, well, ultimately power kind of derives from money to a certain extent, or certainly in this industry. The more GGR you've got, the more EBITDA you've got, the more cash you're controlling, the more money that's circulating through your property, probably the more power and influence you have. So we started off with the basic premise of 1 point per million US dollars of GGR. And over the years, we've refined that because there was an argument that it's not just about GGR, it's also about EBITDA. A company breaking even with X GGR is a lot less powerful than a company making 40% profit margin on X GGR. So that's kind of how we started. And typically, you, Ben, go through and get those numbers. I guess there are some challenges for you in that process.
It's a long process. I mean, we're looking at well over 50 companies for a start that we look at. So it's gathering, as best as I can, the revenue and the EBITDA for the previous 12-month period. For all of those companies, of course, not every company reports their results in the same way. Yep. Many don't report EBITDA at all.
Don't report at all. Some of them.
Yeah, so there's, we have to get around that challenge, and also just the process anyway. Even if everybody did report that in the same way in a nice even format, it still takes time to put that all together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's quite a lengthy process. I'd say a couple of weeks of just preparation before we even really start talking about the list for the year.
Yeah. So Ben puts it all together, and we have a bit of a review of it, and then we assign. We used to assign 1 point, and I should mention I didn't say that we brought in this point system in 2016 as well in an effort to be more objective, to give a score to every person, so that we could try to be comparing apples with apples instead of apples with oranges. We give 1 point for each million US dollars of GGR, but over the years we've added EBITDA to that. And how do we give a point for GGR? How do we give a point for EBITDA? Well, what we actually do is we look at the average EBITDA to GGR margin of the industry, and this year, and we do that on a year by year basis. And this year it was around, sounds like a very precise number for me to put the word around before, but around 28.5%. So we now give, many years ago, we just awarded points on GGR, but then we've refined that. We now give half a point for every million of GGR and half a point for every 285,000 of EBITDA, 285,000 being 28.5% of a million, of course. So I see we've got a little friend in the background. That's nice.
Yeah, I see my dogs decided to be in the video. Hi, Willow.
I saw the tennis ball. I thought it won't be long. Um, so so we do that. So each company then gets a point score based upon its GGR and EBITDA, and we put that together. And then the next step, of course, is we say, well, who are the senior executives that are influencing that company, that are making policy decisions and actually in control of that company? Maybe you could talk a bit about that, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is power? I mean, that's a big question that we've asked ourselves. So, we put a bit of time into how do we split those points between people, and
And who?
what? Yeah, to who? First of all, I mean, who are the people that deserve to be considered as part of each company? Who are the real power players in each company? Some have one clear person, some have two or three clear people, some have no clear people at all. It's actually quite difficult to find, one leading person at the top of the pile. So a lot of time put into that, and then also it's a bit of a consideration of real power and what power means. So that can be everything from, are they the owner versus are they the hired help? That is important. Even for a very well embedded CEO, for example, that's been with the company for many years, are still at the behest of the owner at the end of the day. So, who holds the ultimate power? And of course, some owners are very hands-on, and some are, very much in the background. So, I mean, all of that plays a big role in how we distribute those points through each company.
Right. And some companies, based on their size, and as you say, their power, who are the key power players in that company, we determine whether it's one person or two people or three people. I think the most we've ever gone to is maybe five people for Sands, because Sands has a lot, right? Even now with Mr. Adelson passing away, you've got Rob Goldstein, you've got Patrick Dumont over in Vegas, and then you've got over in Macau, based in Macau. Of course, you've got Grant Chum, Wilfred Wong. You've got Paul Town in Marina Bay Sands. It's running the show over there, but of course he's implementing what he's been told to do. But of course, he's also making decisions on the ground. Of course, yes, that's quite a lot of people, but that's a big organisation. You look at Sands China and MBS combined. I mean, I think their total points for based upon the EBITDA and the GGR was over 11,000 for that company, which is by far more than any other company because it's just such a large company, right? But you get other companies, like a much smaller company, perhaps like Han in Clark here in the Philippines, where pretty much it's just Mr. Han, right? Of course, Dennis is there too, but Mr. Han's really the one that making the decisions. So yeah, we have to go through and work out, well, is it one person? Is it two people? Is it three people? And if so, who are they? And then we have to assign weightings. We have to assign percentages, don't we?
Yeah, well, those points that we come up with in the first instance need to go somewhere. They need to go to someone or a group of people. I think Sands is a great example because it's such an interest, the way it's broken up, because not everybody at Sands works across the Macau and the Singapore operations. Some
Right.
do, some don't.
Well,
So, and then how
Grant
does that
Chum's a
use
good,
as
sorry to
well?
interrupt you, but Grant Chum's a good example, right? He was pretty much just China, but now definitely got Singapore responsibilities too.
Exactly right. Whereas, Dr. Wilfred Wong is very Macau focused. Of course, Paul Town is in Singapore, but of course, Rob Goldstein and Patrick Dumont are, at the top there overlooking both. So that all comes into play. We can't
Mm.
assign any points to Paul Town for Macau, just as we can't assign any for Dr. Wilfred Wong for Singapore. That all is part of the process.
And of course, if you're living on the other side of the planet, even though you might be the ultimate big boss, you're a little bit removed from things. So Patrick and Rob are a little bit removed, even though they're probably the ultimate big bosses. And there's no particular reason we're focusing on them. And it also happens with Bill Hornbuckle for MGM, right? So
Mm.
if you're based on the other side of the planet, it just makes you that little bit less powerful, I guess, because you're not on the ground day to day.
Yeah, we do take that into account for those, the MGMs and the Sands and the Wins is being on the
Yep.
ground in Asia all day, every day is worth something. It's quite an important part of the process. So all these, as you can see already, I mean, there are so many things we take into account when we're trying to assign some of these points that we've come up with.
So then we get all these weightings, and then we get the points for the company for the gaming operation. And when I say operation, it could be a vendor as well. We do no different for vendors or any other company involved in the Asian gaming industry. A lot of people think it's limited to operators. It's not limited to operators. It's just that traditionally it's always operators that have come out on top with the methodology. Although I know we had last year we had in the were they in the ones I think they were in the next five, weren't they? The heads of Aristocrat and Light and Wonder as the two biggest vendors in this part of the world.
That's right. Yep, in the next
Yeah.
five. So I
And
wonder
then
where they will
so
fall this year.
sorry, go on, Ben.
I was going to say, I wonder where they will fall this year. It will be very interesting to
Well,
see.
indeed. We'll find out tonight. So yeah, we do that. We split them up. And then, so now we've got all these names with all these points assigned to them, but that's by no means the end of the process. Perhaps you could explain what we then do.
What do we do next? I've got to remember
Well, we
now.
do the adjustments.
Of course, we do adjustments. Yes,
You
yes.
just
I
said,
mean,
how can you forget?
yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, so we've gone through this process, we've gotten to this point, and we've done an initial weighting, but there are more considerations, of course, beyond that. So there are things like, how is the company performing in general? Is it on an expansion phase? Has it got more expansion in the works, or is it
Mm,
contracting? Is the power really
mm.
waning for the company? What about political connections? That is quite important, particularly in this part of the world. Political connections are very important.
Yes.
So all of those and many other factors. So we start to do some weightings that take into account some of those less clear factors. I mean, when you're talking about revenue numbers, I mean they're a clear that they're there in front of you. They can't be disputed. But so these are now starting to take into account things that are a little less obvious, but no less important.
Yeah, more subjective, harder to measure things, but you've just got to make an estimate. So, I mean, some of the fun kind of we won't name any names, but some of the fun kind of factors we have, which are for adjustments, either plus or minus, and there's percentage, and then we not only do we go up or down, but we weight the up or down by a certain percentage. So it might be plus 5% or minus 5% or plus 10% or even plus or minus 50% if it's a massive, massive factor. So there are kind of obvious things like political connections, familial connections, but there are fun things like, sunset business, take a business that, like, let's be honest, pachinko, for example, right? It's probably a sunset business. It's a waning business on the way out. It's not going to be gone next year. It's not going to be gone in 5 years, but it's going down. Or new boy factor, they just got into the job 3 months ago or something. So you've got to really cut them down for new boy factor because they haven't really settled into the job. Or I don't know what else, Ben. Just throw some factors at me. I can't think of them now.
I
I know.
mean, if I look at the Australian market as an example, I mean, just
Oh,
the
yep.
political environment in Australia right now is quite anti this industry,
Yeah, all the
and
Australians got negative factors because you're in
yeah,
Australia. Yep.
yeah, and it's undisputed. It's a very tough environment for the Australian operators at the moment, with no obvious signs of that dissipating anytime soon. So that has to be considered too.
Yeah, so there are all these adjustments, and some people get no adjustments at all. I think that's pretty rare. Almost everybody gets at least one adjustment, and some people get as many as four or even five adjustments up or down. And sometimes the adjustments cancel each other out. Sometimes people have got pluses and minuses, and they cancel each other out. So we do all these adjustments for each of the people, and then multiply that through, and then so we you do these add these factors or multiply these factors by their point score of their weighting of the operation, and then obviously that gives us a list, and so then we put the list together. But even then we're not done. Next step, we start doing the head-to-head comparisons.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we start to look at, we sort of come up by this stage. Well, by this stage, we've got a list of our 70, 80, 90 people. We've got a list of them in the order that they are at this stage. And as we do adjustments, that changes. People move up and down throughout that. So then we have to take a look at that list and just see if anything stands out as looking clearly out of place. Is somebody that's just come into the industry, first 2 months in the job, not much industry experience, but happens to be with a fairly large company, is sitting up in the top 10. We might say, that looks a little bit much for this particular
Well,
point
they
in
wouldn't be in the
time.
top 10, but they might be in 10 to 20, and we say that looks a little bit much for them.
Yeah, that's right. So that's looking for obvious problems with the list. Certainly.
And head-to-heads as well. Like sometimes it'll work out, and then of course, we won't use any names, but person A is ahead of person B. Well, hang on a minute, does that really feel right? And sometimes we even use the test. If you were to walk into a bar and person A and person B were in the bar, and you wanted to walk up and talk to the most important person, who would you go to? And then and you think about that, and then, or maybe they're around the wrong way. And there's even an interesting thing sometimes in pecking orders. Sometimes A beats B, B beats C, and C beats A. For some reason, like maybe when they first met, or maybe A is the boss of C today, but C's been the boss of A for the past 30 years, and circumstances have changed. So that's interesting. And that's kind of where the rest of the judging panel comes in more. I mean, we use them before this stage as well, but this is where we really, because it's become so subjective it starts objective and then it becomes more subjective as we go through, doesn't it?
It does. I think, one of the things with our judging panel, and a number of our judges have been with us for a number of years now as part of our judging panel, but I think that our collective experience, insights into the companies that we're talking about here and the individuals we're talking about as well, provides a lot of good insight into where those power bases really lie within companies, and some of the political mechanizations within certain companies as well. We've got some pretty good insights of how that really works behind the scenes, and that really helps us if we've got a couple of people that very, very much on a neck and neck in terms of where they might sit on the power level. There's usually one that's considered internally to be a little higher in the pecking order. So I think we've got a pretty good insight into how that really sits for a lot of these companies these days.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the rest of the judging panel. I mean, I guess we do sort of the hard yakka, the hard yards, and the sort of slog. But then when it comes to the refinements and the real sort of tricky stuff, which is so important, the people we have currently on the panel, the other people on the judging panel, and people we've had in prior years have been incredibly helpful and useful. And of course, we get information behind the scenes from people. Of course, like any media company does, we've got connections, and we get information behind the scenes. And we use that information responsibly. We're here to promote the industry, and we're here to support the industry. We don't want to damage the industry. Quite the opposite. We want to support the industry and help the industry grow. So we're responsible about that. We don't reveal publicly things that are inappropriate to reveal, but we do use that background information in making those head-to-head decisions. Some of them are really tough. I mean, some of them, if you look at the point score, a lot of people don't look at the point score; they just look at the rankings. But some of those point scores, there are people who are 1 point difference. Like one's got a score of, I don't know, 744, and one's 745, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but I know there's a trio of people this year who are extremely close, and it was really with the input of the judging panel that enabled us to come to a conclusion of actually where that trio should sit in order, 1, 2, 3 out of those three people. So, and they're not actually 1, 2, 3 on the list, by the way. They're somewhere else on there, but but that's the great insight of the judging panel, is being able to say, look, I'm aware of this working within that company? Have you considered this? We get a lot of insight like that, much of which we'll never actually print, of course, not for printing,
Of
but
course.
in
Yeah,
terms
of
of
course.
putting our list together, it's extremely helpful. So yeah, absolutely invaluable, the insights of that judging panel that we've got.
Yes, yes. And then so finally, and even sometimes in the judging panel, I mean, that's why we have an odd number of people. Sometimes it might just come down to four people think this and three people think this, and we shrug our shoulders and go, well, let's go with the four people. It does come down to that sometimes. Usually not, though. Usually there's a consensus. Once we talk it out, we talk it out, we talk it out. And that's why the process takes so long. I mean, I guess we should talk about number one on the list as well. I mean, there's been only ever been four people over the years. Number one, I think Stanley Ho was the first year ever. I think KT Lim was, well, I can't remember now, but second year or third year or something. And other than that, it's been Francis and Sheldon the whole time. Sheldon was number one for 6 years straight. That's a really long time. Francis has been number one for the past 5 years. So if he is number one tonight, then that'll equal Sheldon's record of 6 years. And sometimes people say something silly like, it's so boring, the same person's number one every year. And my answer to that, not saying, don't read anything into what's going to happen tonight from this conversation, by the way. But sometimes people say that. The idea is not to be entertaining. The idea is to be accurate, right?
Yeah, and look, I would say that no matter of course, as you say, Francis has been number one the past 5 years, but we've seen movement on that top 50, lots of movement in
Yep.
lots of other positions, including like the number two has changed most years as well.
Mm.
So it's not like the list is very stagnant. It's in fact this year we've got quite a few new faces this year that came into consideration, be it by companies growing or succession plans or various factors. So now it certainly made this year's list very interesting to put together. And talking before about all the things we have to consider for each person, when there's a whole heap of new people to the industry too. I mean that certainly makes for a lot of discussion about how do they fit in, what's their experience, what's their are they part of an ingrained family or are they completely new to the industry? So I think that for all of our viewers and our readers will make it a very interesting list to look at this year as well.
And the other thing we should mention, I mean, you mentioned before, 70, 80, 90 people. People might think, well, why so many? There's only 50 on the list. Well, you've actually got to look at way more than 50 because you've got to get that cutoff right. You've got to look at all the candidates who could possibly be in that 50. So you can't just stop at 50 because what if there's a guy who's 51 you haven't thought about, and actually they're not 51 at all, they're 50, and the guy who's 50 should be 51. So you've got to look at a lot of people, and that's why we do the next five. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the next five and the ones to watch. Explain those.
Yeah, I mean, each year we publish the next five is pretty self-explanatory. It's literally the next five. It's 51 to 55,
Yep.
but published in alphabetical order, not in numerical
Yeah.
order of where they finish. Leave it up to people to have a bit of a guess where they think they might sit. But it does show, these are some people that are really on the cusp of the 50. Maybe they've just slipped out. Maybe they're on the way up. A bit of both. And then
So
the ones
some people might be stuck in the next five for a decade.
possibly.
Yeah.
And ones to watch, of course, is just 20 people that are on the radar, really. They may be people that are, candidates for the 50 aren't quite there yet, but making considerable moves, considerable plays in the industry. It's actually quite an eclectic group of people in the ones to watch.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's sometimes people think it's 56 to 75, and it's not. A lot of them would be in 56 to 75 if we did keep going 56, 57, 58. If we kept going, a lot of them would be in that range, but that's a major factor in deciding whether they're in the ones to watch or not, but certainly not the only factor. Sometimes there are people. We had Mr. Okada in there, Mr. Okada Senior, the older Mr. Okada, in there for a long time. We've had other people that are just in there for, they're just somebody we should keep an eye on for whatever reason. Their influence in the industry, they're interesting characters or whatever it might happen to be. We should also mention another reason why we do 51 to 55 in alphabetical order is so that we don't publish the bubble boy. All those people familiar with poker will know the expression, the bubble boy, which is the highest person not to cash in a tournament, which is obviously the worst place to be. You'd rather bust out in level one and just get on with your life than spend all that time getting to X plus one, where one to X all get paid, and you're the highest ranked person who doesn't get paid. So I think seeing your name at number 51 would be a bit frustrating. So we avoid that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Mr. Okada because he was the one that sprung to my mind as well. He for a number of years he was in our ones to watch, having well and truly lost his power, but making so many waves in the industry anyway that he had to be watched. So
You
he was
never know
no-brainer.
what he could have done. I think he's done now, isn't he? We don't really know, but like he certainly made a lot of waves over there at Okada, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He appears to be yeah, a little quieter these days, but he's also quite elderly, so that's no surprise.
Well, yeah, I don't know what the number is, but I know it's way up there. So, he's certainly a vigorous fellow. But anyway, not to focus on any one person in particular, but it's a good example of ones to watch that may not necessarily be in 56 to 75, I should say. Have we missed anything? I think that's pretty much explains it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's basically the process. I should just say that after all our consultation with our judges and our last refinements, and when we come to our final list, the judging panel themselves don't know what the 50
Mm,
is at this point. They will
yeah.
find out the final 50 tonight, just like everybody else. So the number of people that actually know what the 50 is very, very much a need to know basis. It's about 3 or 4 people at most at this stage of the proceedings, Andrew.
Yes, very, very small number of people because, obviously there are some people that have to know for us to put the event on, but they are definitely sworn to secrecy. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the years of keeping it under lock and key till the moment comes. And you get so many people on the night and at other times saying, "Oh, it's all a bit of fun, we don't care." But there's a lot of evidence that people really do care quite a lot.
Yeah, they act very coy pre, but once the list is out, we get a lot of feedback. We get good and bad.
Yes. Yes, and there's a bit of lobbying goes on as well, mostly to be higher in the list, occasionally to not be on the list. So there's been a bit of lobbying for that as well. Sometimes one or two executives thinks it puts a target on their back. So that's quite interesting. But what do we do with all that lobbying, Ben?
We ignore that, Andrew.
We ignore it completely. Absolutely. We famously had an email one year about, well, again, no names, of course. We famously had an email once, one person saying that they politely declined to participate in the list this year. And we said, well, you don't have any choice in the matter, I'm afraid. It was what we thought. We didn't say that to the person, of course. But
Yeah,
we
that's
do
right.
it without any fear or favor. We made the decision when we first did it back in 2016. When we did it in 2016, the list, of course, has been going since 2008. We made the decision that we're going to do it without fear or favor. If it hurts us, so be it. Doesn't matter. Just we got to do it right. And I think we've stuck to our guns on that over the years.
Yeah, that's right. I think we've done a very good job of that. I'll certainly have some funny memories of various lobbying efforts or even trying to buy positions in some rare
Yeah,
instances, which we also declined. So,
we also
but
declined. Yeah.
certainly it shows that there are some people who are pretty keen to be on this list.
Yes, or to be higher.
Yes, yes,
All
that's
right.
right.
Well, that's it. That's our explanation of how we do it, and I hope that that's interesting for the viewers. And it'll be a great night tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. There's going to be some fantastic things going on, some great entertainment. I've already tasted the food. The food's awesome. It's just going to be a really, really good night. After party up at the Sky Bar, which has got awesome views. I was actually there for Halloween evening, for the party they had, and that was a great party up there. So, for all of you who are going to be here at Solaire Resort North tonight, I really look forward to seeing you tonight. And we promise Ben will have got himself dressed up a bit by then. And for those of you who aren't here, oh, don't forget the live streaming. The cocktail hour, the Welcome Cocktails hour from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Macau time is live streamed, and there'll be some details. You should have already received some details on how to watch that. I think just go to the IAG YouTube channel or just go to IAG website. It'll be there. Or the instructions on how to do it will be there. I think it's also on our LinkedIn think it might also be on our Facebook too. Generally, the IAG Facebook is just Chinese, but and the LinkedIn is English. But go to the IAG LinkedIn or the IAG YouTube. I think Solera are also streaming it through some of their platforms, so that'll be great. But the streaming ends at 7:30. I'm afraid the gala dinner itself we don't stream because we want to make it intimate and personal for the people who are there. So we'll see you all tonight, those of you who are going to be there. And for the others, we'll see you when we next see you. Don't forget MAD. We've announced the MAD at Wynn Palace on November 29. And then, of course, there'll be our Christmas MAD in Manila. We haven't announced where that's going to be yet, but it is locked in, and it'll be on December the 6th. There you go. We'll give you the date. Anything more? I think that's it, isn't it, Ben?
That's it. I'll just say we will be announcing our Christmas MAD in Manila this coming week, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, looking forward to. Well, I've just basically better get myself to Solar Resort North very quickly, Andrew, if it's tonight. So,
well, hang on. Maybe we already have announced it.
Oh yes, it's Friday, of course. How could I forget?
Friday, don't forget. It's Friday.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, guys. See you tonight, and keep reading IAG, and have a great party tonight. And we'll see you then. Bye for now. See ya.
Run.